We do little wins. It's how we feel safe. When we're safe, we get creative. When we get stressed, we have three responses, no creative responses. We run away, we freeze up, or we fight through it. Yeah. We fight like hell, and I'll do it because I'm tough enough. And you're miserable doing art, and it kills your love. Yeah. So we artists particularly don't do well when we have to soldier along. Yeah. We can train stress into a program, but you don't start there. You start with this safe, like it's a child.
Yeah. Hey guys, in this episode, I'm joined by Steve Huston. He's a fine artist, art instructor, and illustrator known for his figurative work. Steve has taught all over the world at places like Art Center, New Masters Academy, and Disney Animation. Steve's teaching is all about accepting yourself and keeping the creative process fun. I've always been a really big fan of Steve, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
I appreciate doing this, man.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Well,
welcome to Montana.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really, it's amazing here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the way I normally start these things is the point of this podcast is not to talk about how to get a job or how to become a better artist or any of that kind of stuff. It's more about the why of doing it. You know?
Okay.
And I meet a lot of people who are really caught up on improving their skills and they're caught up on getting this job. But, you know, I really believe that once somebody gets the skills and they have the success, it's not like their life is over and they've completed everything. They still have to find fulfillment in spite of all that.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is because, you know, you're really well known as this teacher. You've done a lot of, you know, things that have impacted a lot of people. And I suspect that, you know, you still have to find things to occupy your time to keep you validated and to keep you excited, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the human animal is a race of artists, which means we're creative, which means we're natural puzzle solvers and natural meaning makers. And so, for example, we all set goals, and you'll achieve the goal or you won't achieve the goal, but either outcome, you're just going to come up with another goal.
Yeah.
You make $1 million, you want to make 10 million. You know, you get a gallery in New York, you want a gallery in Paris.
Right.
That's one of the ways we create meaning.
Yeah.
So, and lucky for us artists, art is a natural way to build into meaning. Yeah. Because it's actually designed to talk about meaning.
Right.
So art, all the art forms are metaphors or can be metaphors for life.
Yeah.
So when you focus just on the craftsmanship, and craftsmanship's really important. I spent 45 years chasing craftsmanship. I love craftsmanship, but it's not art.
Yeah.
It's one of the tools in the toolbox for making art.
Yeah. And
oftentimes, especially with we figurative realists, we get caught up in the craft because it's such a craft heavy genre.
Yeah.
You know, we could be abstract expressionists and throw paint. And you can do just as beautiful work in that genre as our genre, but it's not very craft heavy.
Yeah.
So for us, we got to learn linear perspective, aerial perspective, laws of light, canons of beauty, art history, on and on, structure, gesture, all that kind of stuff. It goes on and on and on. And each one you could spend your life exploring. Yeah. And so what do? Do you just keep leveling up and chasing the craft? Some people do and have a lovely time doing it. Or do you use the craft as something that's helping you achieve a goal?
Yeah.
And if you do that, two things happen. One, you don't have to be a world-class craftsman to do world-class art.
Yeah.
There's a lot of art genres out there. You could look at the Impressionists, and for the most part, they weren't in traditional terms great craftsmen, but they did great art.
Yeah.
And they did it, interestingly enough, all with their own voice for the most part. Yeah. The Baroque artists were within that style and that period of history, and yet they had their own voice. Van Dyck was a student of Rubens, and yet you can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And so there's something going on there. What we've done is we've made art about that craft, and we measure it by how good your craft is. But let's say you level up on your own, or you find somebody on the internet in your hometown that gets you to world class. You do charcoal portraits that are world class. That's fantastic. Most people will never come close to that. And yet we put your beautiful charcoal portrait in a giant gallery with all the other thousands of world-class charcoal portrait artists that are out there. They're all fantastic. Oftentimes they're doing demos on YouTube. It's incredible. But you put them in a room, can you tell the difference?
Yeah.
Can you tell that that guy's a little better and that guy's a little worse? How do you measure world-class? And how do you distinguish it? How do you walk in and say, oh, I'm going to buy Christian's world-class portrait rather than this fellow over here? Why would they do that when there's no real difference?
Yeah.
And that's still not invaluable or unvaluable.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not optimal. We could take it a step farther. We can take very good craftsmanship, or at least solid craftsmanship, and push it from the head, which is what craftsmanship is. It's an engineering problem.
Yeah.
And move it down into the heart, where I think art does the most good.
Absolutely.
Where it was designed to do the most good.
Yeah.
Just like spiritual traditions, which is why I always talk about those two things together. It's a fun parallel, but it's also they're joined at the hip.
Yeah.
All the traditions, spiritual traditions, used art as a foundation of their teachings.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I feel like on a broader scale too. I mean, you were talking about earlier how art has moved towards, at least recently, treat like training artists as engineers versus as intuitive artists. People,
that's 250 years.
Well, and I think even beyond that, people going to school, people going to college, they're trained in that same exact way for math and science, and from a very young age, people are hardwired to try and solve problems in a very scientific way. When I think a lot of art. And my favorite art that stands out to me specifically is very intuitive and from the heart. Same thing with music as well.
All the art forms.
Yeah,
all the art forms. And so it's finding a balance. It's not saying that craftsmanship's bad, that meaning making is better. It's finding a balance between it. Everything's about balance, and we live in a particularly unbalanced time. And probably 150 years ago, 250 years ago, they said the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're always trying to find the balance between the two, not getting rid of that, but finding a comfortable relationship, which is what we in our form call composing.
Yeah.
We compose two very different colors, two very different shapes, two very different sizes, or 20 different versions of those.
Yeah.
How do we find a commonality and yet keep their beautiful separateness? We struggle with that in our lives. We struggle with that in societies, and in clicks and out clicks. We do. It's a condition of life. Art is particularly engineered, designed to try and solve that problem on some level,
right,
which makes it, in my view, magical.
Yeah.
Both in the metaphorical sense, and I believe in the real sense. I think there's a little magic out there, and art's a wonderful tool for that. So, and it's going back to your point about how we're trained in schools, we're not trained in school the way our human brain wants to be trained, the way it likes to learn, and we're not motivated the way we are naturally motivated. A chimpanzee can be intrinsically motivated, which means it will do something for the sheer joy of doing it. Yeah. And if you give it a banana or give it some other treat, it will steal the joy. It'll become extrinsic, outer motivation, not inner motivation. And all of a sudden, it starts doing it for the reward. And it loses its creativity, oddly enough. It loses its motivation. You got to keep giving it more bananas or whatever it is. You got to give that sales staff more bonuses or whatever it is. Yeah. And they'll only do it as long as they're getting more and more and more over time. Right. If you stop doing that, they're done. Yeah. Whereas people who are doing something out of an innate love, caring for disabled children or throwing colored mud on a canvas, whatever it is, that if you attach reward and punishment, basically, which is exactly what we do in business, in our political and our judicial system, and in our school system. Yeah. Right. If you turn out more widgets, we'll reward you to go on to the next class on how to do even better widgets. Absolutely. Kind of thing. And it steals the creativity. Yeah. And we're cramming for the test, so we only hold just a fraction. If you're a genius and you're particularly engaged in our conversation, you'll remember about 15% of what was said here. Yeah. Right. So that puts me at about 4% probably. Yeah. The rest is gone. Yeah. But we artists, we've got to get control of that information, all the information that we want for our particular genre about the face, the eyes, the pupils, all that kind of stuff, so that we can do creative connections. Creative connections is taking something that you've just learned for the most part and something you already know, and go, oh, those things go together. Yeah. The ball that I bounced as a child could be the foundation of the structure of the whole life.
Yeah.
That thing called matter and that thing called energy that everybody thinks is completely separate are actually connected, and in fact the same thing at the right time and the right speed.
Yeah.
That's a physics idea. It's also a spiritual idea. It's also an emotional idea.
Yeah.
I want to be this separate thing that's valued for my separateness and yet connected to this greater community called artist, family, Republican Party, Christian fundamentalism, whatever it is. And I celebrate all that stuff. And yet keep their own individuality. Now, where in life does that really happen very much, especially in social media where we're more social than we've ever been and yet more lonely, more depressed, more suicidal than we've ever been, more quick to self-harm if we're ostracized from a group of people we've never even seen. We've just texted to.
Right.
There's this dysfunction of connection right now that's doing a lot of damage.
Right.
And spiritual traditions, some of the old wisdom traditions, and art traditions, if the artists know what they have some say in the healing of that potentially.
Yeah.
And if we can teach artists how to be creative, how to look for connections, how to do the craft and have something more powerful, some meaning or fulfillment, as you said, behind the craft, it'll make them more motivated. They'll level up their skills and they might change a few lives.
Yeah.
They might bring a little comfort. They might find purpose in themselves. And purpose is just curiosity and passion turned outward.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm curious about how you would draw this thing. Wow, there's more to that than I thought. I'm getting passionate about that idea. This has done a lot for me. I want to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, what was inward and comforting, motivating, intrinsically fulfilling, sometimes we choose to share it with the world.
Right.
And it can do a lot of good.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a second to talk about the mentorships I'm hosting. Mentorship is personally something I found super useful. Having someone to bounce ideas off of, get critiqued by, and get general advice was instrumental to my development as an artist and as a person. I spent most of my professional life helping other people develop their brands and businesses. And if you'd be interested in having the same help, I'm charging $150 a month for a 1-hour phone call, access to me on Discord, and general art advice. In my experience, every successful person that I've talked to has spent a ton of time and money on their own education. Check out my website in the description if you'd like to see more information on it. If you'd like to talk with me before committing, that's totally fine. Contact me on my website for a 20-minute call to see if it'll work for you. Thanks, and back to the video.
Yeah, well, and I think on another level too, it's something like AI art. We talked about it briefly as well, where it's challenged a lot of people's ideas of what art is, and if it's worth doing in the first place. And I think no matter what, painting and drawing and all that stuff is awesome, no matter if you're the worst artist on the planet, you know. And I think that something like AI, it gives people that. Like, people inherently want to be the widget maker and all that stuff to be able to make a living and to pay their bills and stuff. And once that is taken away, then it almost takes away the ability to love art from a very shallow perspective.
Yeah, but also from a practical perspective, there's some wisdom to that because, I mean, you got to pay for the art supplies at least.
Yeah.
So that's a concern. And finding that balance. The problem, I think, well, there's all sorts of problems and all sorts of good things about AI and all these advanced, technologies going so fast, is you get the information, you don't have time to build the wisdom. So the AI is going to have all the chops to render anything that we can render. But there's no necessarily wisdom behind that.
Yeah.
It's a child in that sense. It's mimicking.
Yeah. And
it's cleverly mimicking. Is still mimicking. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, there's got to be some balance between a machine that is cribbing information from all these sources, writers say, to write screenplays someday so that we don't have to pay humans, from the people who spent 20 years, a lot of money, a lot of time to develop that craft. We have to decide some balance to that, some copyright idea of that. Where that flies, who knows? Yeah. We'll just have to see on that.
Right.
But to me, it doesn't matter in some sense. I mean, I make my living being an artist, but I do it because I'm intrinsically motivated, because I love it. And if I can't make a nickel on it, I'd still do it.
Yeah. Well, a question that I ask everybody on every podcast is, would you be doing the same exact thing you'd be doing right now if you had $1 billion? And it's like,
Exactly.
I couldn't pay you money to stop painting, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe for a couple months. Enough money.
Yeah.
But I've stopped painting right now actually because I'm my focus for the last 3 or 4 years. I did a couple commissions I sent out a couple months ago, but for the most part, all of the art I'm doing is for my coaching program.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be that for another 2 years or so.
Yeah.
So I'm not producing much art just for me, but I'm coaching just for me.
Right.
I want to share what I think are important ideas to people out there, and I want to see them do better because then they'll go out and help 5 or 50 people.
Right.
And those people, and we get that wonderful ripple effect, that exponential growth of realizing it's a good news in that old time religion sense in a way that we are artistic creative beings and only half of life is surviving and paying the bills. The other half is being creative.
Yeah.
It might be in how you raise your children. We homeschooled. It might be in all areas of life you can be creative. It might be in the business you start. In your last month or so, in your next couple months, you're being very creative in your lifestyle. There's real meaning and joy and excitement and momentum to that.
Absolutely.
So teaching people to be creative, maybe with a pencil and charcoal, but in their life, and hopefully both or whatever their form is a big deal. And most people don't realize it. And although that's changing quickly with the internet, but they don't have community to talk about it. Yeah. And unless we talk about it, we're little children that just feel and can't strategize.
Yeah.
It doesn't give us the best chance for whatever our goals are. And we're, as I said earlier, we're goal-making creatures.
Yeah.
We're the only creature on this planet, as far as I know, that can choose to consciously evolve.
Yeah.
You can decide to be more next month than you are this month, and you have a very good chance of doing it, especially if you have a community to help you, if you have people to talk to.
Right. Well, I mean, in my experience, I've met so many people, and I'm sure you have too, and I've been blown away just by the competence and creativity of everybody. Everyone's amazing.
Astounding. It is. You're
the world,
exactly right.
It's an amazing place, and I think often the trouble that people run into is not their capacity to create and do amazing things. It's to ask permission and to step out into an unknown place, to walk into a place where, they don't know what's going to happen and to try out something with the risk of it failing.
Yeah. Being creative, there's a good chunk of courage that goes along with that because you don't know what's going to happen when you're creative. Yeah. But also because we're built to grow, to evolve, and to become more next time than we are this time, we also have to articulate and we have to be shown possibilities. Most of us create what are called set points in some circles, behavioral science circles, and we create our own glass ceiling. Yeah. Oh, I could never have a gallery in Europe. Yeah. I could never have people pay money for what I do for fun. Yeah. I'm not good enough to be my own best salesman, whatever it is. I'm not good enough to have a life partner. Yeah. We put these limiting beliefs on ourselves through all the baggage we all know about, or maybe the biology in there. And most of us don't know how to push past that because we're not in an age right now where we get to talk about those in-between problems. Right. You're on my side or you're my enemy. The other side of the aisle. Yeah. You're a foreigner. I'm a nationalist. Yeah. I'm right wing. You're left wing. That's oppositional. That's warlike language. Right. Artists don't talk that way. Shadow is not the opposite of light. They're beautifully intimately connected. Foreground is not the opposite of background. They're beautifully intimately related. And we have beautiful strategies to show that. Yeah. Every art form does, and every person should, have strategies to connect with the other, to find safety, find a community that supports us, be around people who are so much better than me. I didn't believe they could get there, and yet they started worse off than me. Yeah. What does that do? A old white man is rich, hanging out with other old white men. Well, good for us, but what about a young man of color? Yeah. He needs to see old men of color,
Yeah.
old women of color, gender fluid, whatever it is, however we package ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to see that up there, and then we know we can keep climbing.
Yeah.
And if we can't talk about that, it's taboo to have dialogue between those opposites, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Because now we're at war, and I can't let your truth in, because if you're right, I must be wrong, because that's our mindset. And if you have one good point, you might steal some of my followers. I won't be an influencer anymore. Right. So all this fear around territory lost and gained.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess the crazy part about to me as I'm getting older is how much of a decision it is, how much of a leap of faith it is, because I don't think you have to look far into anybody's life to find some horrible tragedy or some reason not to paint or create or do anything, and the more that you're able to look outside yourself with either acts of service to other people or just taking care of yourself and your family members and all that, I think the more likely you are going to have a pretty meaningful life.
Yeah. We've got to survive first. We got to be safe. We're in an abusive relationship, whatever. We can't pay our rent. We've got to work that out first. And then as soon as we have extra time, extra energy, a feeling of autonomy, free, safe time, we've got a cave that can't come at us from behind. We've got a fire. We're warm from the winter. Now we can create art. And humanity did it. As soon as, in fact, pre-humanity, Neanderthals did it. But as soon as we had free, safe time, we smarter chimps started to create art. And so that survival, that soldier, and that artist, that survivor and that creator, we're built from both. Yeah. Built from both. And we need to have both, or we're kind of doomed.
Absolutely. And I was reading The Art Spirit, and I remember there was a section of the book where he talked about how he went to an art school, and he saw students doing exercises really well, and he left for 10 years and came back and saw the same students doing the same exercises but a little bit better. And I think the other side of that is something like endless preparation might be like a procrastination towards doing the thing you really want to be doing,
Yeah, or just it can be that for sure. Or it can be just a bad strategy. Yeah. If you keep practicing those 5-minute sketches on the West Coast or up to 20-minute sketches, you'll get really good really quick, and then you'll plateau. Yeah. And 3 years later, you'll be at about the same level. You take that workshop for 3 days, you're going to learn a ton of information. Knowledge is never the problem, not in this day and age. It used to be. Yeah. Knowledge was held close. Now it's democratized. You can get, give or take, a conspiracy theory. You can find anything you want to find on the internet for free.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's the implementation of it. Having a way to curate all the information you could take, just about the figure, just about what to do in the light side of the figure. Curate that in a way that you can make sense of it so you're not overwhelmed, so you can make rapid growth. And then there has to be a way to move like the stock market. Sometimes it'll go down, but you want to keep going up. Yeah. And we know how that works with the brain. We know how we slip into flow states like nobody else. We artists, Tibetan monks, extreme athletes, artists. That's who they study for flow states. Flow state is where you're working outside of your own talent, usually at a higher level. Yeah. You forget you're hungry. You forget your legs fell asleep. You think it's 8 in the evening. It's 4 in the morning. All those things that lock you into this state of creative bliss. Yeah. We know how to do that, but not our education system. That pulls us out of that. It's monotonous. It's repetitive. You got to wait for that guy. Or we got to rush ahead because of that woman. Yeah. And we're in this constant stress or boredom, fear. It's being a police officer. You're either bored to tears or you're scared for your life. Yeah. That's our school system. Right. So there's a better way to learn that. And if we just get really good at a simple process that's linear, that's not creativity. Creativity is not linear. It's quantum, really. But it moves not just straight ahead, but wide with creative possibility and deep with possibly meaningful. Yeah, those marks can be meaningful. You can make, like Katie Kovitz, a soul-sucking sad, the loss of a mother losing her child during war. That's what or lithographs were. They were horror shows. How do you make a soul agonizing sadness in line quality?
Yeah.
You get asked, how do I make a good line? What's a beautiful line quality? That's a decent answer.
Yeah.
But how do you make a confident, regal, affluent line like Sargent did?
Yeah.
Or a erotic and slightly antisocial line, let's say, like a Egon Schiele? That's a good question too.
Yeah.
And that's taking it and going sideways as you move forward, and that's how you'll keep moving up.
Well, I think part of it too is leaning into other identities that you have, because if you're a painter, you're also probably somebody's son or daughter or father or mother or whatever.
Yeah.
And, for you, your boxing paintings, like you're obviously a boxer and you're into all that kind of stuff. And if you were to only lean into draftsmanship, you'd be almost killing a part of yourself in order to, I guess for some reason, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how you make an identity.
Yeah.
You have certain peak and trough moments, traumas in your childhood. We all have them.
Yeah.
Glory moments in our high school, maybe, whatever it is, and that defines us.
Yeah.
And we can build our art form that way.
Yeah.
We can take from the best, take the emotion of Katie Kovitz, take the mark making of Sargent, take the nervous searching line of Pontormo, and put those all together, and then layer in a little bit of you on top of that, and you've built your style strategically that way,
right.
And you can build your process that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really good, having trouble motivated. I'm really good with torsos. I draw a lot of torsos. It's funner. It's more confident. I feel good about it. Once I get started, all of a sudden I lose myself. So I'll rebuild my love of art by doing what I already love, like a little kid does, play with no goals.
Yeah.
Or I'm got a good momentum. I really want to level up my figure drawing. I'm going to go to the joints because I'm pretty good at the simple construction, but I kind of dead end there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the joints. Those are where those big simple parts come together. And there's these secondary structures that are structural like the big parts are, but more nuanced, more fluid, and more integrated. They're like the Loch Ness Monster that comes up and shows itself and then submerges into the surface of the water. And I'll chase some of those, and I'll spend, it's called the 80-20 rule, the Parietal rule. It's actually the systems of galaxies and economic systems, all sorts of stuff. But it's also just a great habit. 80% of the time I'll do the torsos, it's fun, or I'll do the full figure drawings. That's what I'm comfortable to do. It's what my class tells me to do. 20% of the time I'll work on my weak points maybe.
Yeah.
I'll work on the hand, even though it's a little overwhelming, but I'll start with the simplest part of the hand. I'll start with this. It's just an egg, it's a bit of a drumstick in there, fits in there. That looks like a puppy dog or a kidney bean or whatever, and I'll start building extra time. Just 20%, every fifth drawing, every fifth art practice. I'll work on my weak points, bring those up, and then pretty soon they'll be maybe the best thing.
Yeah.
And then I'll work on the toes.
Yeah.
And then I'll work on the ears in perspective. Then I'll work on female hips because I'm good at male hips. And you keep building that up strategically.
Yeah.
That probably doesn't happen unless you can articulate those ideas.
I also think if you have a healthy relationship with your ego as well, because somebody might look at their weak points and try it out and become embarrassed, or they might fail.
Yeah. And I call that the little win strategy.
Yeah.
If you're going to teach your little boy, let's say whatever, age 6 years old, how to ride that two-wheeler, you don't start on a two-wheeler on a mountain bike going down the 5,000-foot slope.
Yeah.
You start maybe with a three-wheeler, maybe with a push bike where there's no pedals at all.
Yeah.
You hold that little waist and you keep them on smooth pavement and you just roll them up and forth. You don't even take the kickstand up. You just let them sit there and get a feel for it. Little tiny. It's a little uncomfortable. I'm a little scared, but I know it's safe.
Yeah.
And I can fail and not feel bad about my self-image or not physically harm myself.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with overwhelmingly difficult things like the reflected light in a well-structured face.
Yeah.
We do little wins. It's how we feel safe. When we're safe, we get creative. When we get stressed, we have three responses, no creative responses. We run away, we freeze up or we fight through it.
Yeah.
We fight like hell, and I'll do it because I'm tough enough. And you're miserable doing art, and it kills your love. Yeah. So we artists particularly don't do well when we have to soldier along. Yeah. We can train stress into a program, but you don't start there. You start with the safe, like it's a child. Yeah. And so I think of all of our artist selves, because they were not nurtured. Maybe we had a loving family. Maybe we had a loving teacher. But overall, society did support us in being artists. Yeah. If you're going to be an artist, you better get that accounting degree and make sure you can make a living, because you're going to just starve. If you're going to be an artist, you're going to end up cutting your ear off, blowing your brains out, drinking yourself to death, self-destructive artists. All these scare tactics, out of love, they want to protect us from art. Yeah. And it talks us out of our own creative genius. Yeah. So we're little children that never had a chance to mature in our creative genius, which the human race is designed. We've remade the planet. We can remake ourselves. We're creative dynamos. Yeah. And we're talked out of that. So we have to kind of rebuild that little child inside and treat it like you would your own child who's 4 to 6 years old, as you would a stranger's child in the park. Yeah. You wouldn't say, here, I'm going to play you chess and beat the hell out of them. Somehow, I play with my, keep your voice down, but I play with my soon-to-be 13-year-old. She's beaten me every single time we've ever played chess since she was 6 years old. I don't know how she does it. Somehow she always beats Dad, and she wants to come back and do it again because she feels safe in that. It's fun. You set them up. You rig the system to make sure they almost certainly will win. Yeah. And then they get excited. They feel safe. And then they grow up. Pretty soon she's going to have to be going easy on me. Yeah. So that's what we do for others. That's what we should do for ourselves. That's what our school system should do for us. And then we can train in the grit later, the Navy SEAL kind of stuff. There's a place for that to excel at a wild stage, but not for most of us. Most of us don't need that, and we shouldn't start there. Yeah, yeah. Well,
and I think it takes a fair amount of fluency, and like I heard advice from a runner is, the advice is not to run 10 miles a day for a beginning runner. It's to go walk around the block, do what you're willing to do versus what you think you should be doing. And as I'm getting older, I'm finding this stuff is relatively simple. It's just the hard part is applying these concepts to higher and higher, more complicated, scarier goals. Yeah.
You're right. It's very simple, but we live complicated lives. Yeah. We have several identities, as you said. Right. We have several influences. We have several social commitments. Yeah. And so it gets complicated and we forget the simple. So most of the time, really successful folks, however you define that, act very fast on new information. Yeah. And they keep simplifying down. They'll start at the beginning of a day doing the 1, 2, or 3 most important things in that order. And if they don't only get to one, they got the most important thing down, the biggest needle mover for their company or for their drawing skills or for their relationship with their loved one. And then they go down the list. And if they have extra time, they'll put out fires. Yeah. But oh my God, your car's got a flat. Okay, just call tow truck. I have to do this first. Right. Because they know willpower fails, and they know if they do the most important thing first, they've made the biggest leap in progress, however they define that. Yeah. And if they act fast, rather than waiting a week or 2, or I'll do that I'll try that drawing course in 5 years, or when I graduate, or when the kids are out. Do something at least a little bit towards that now, now. Yeah. And look how much farther, even 5 minutes a day and nothing else. In 5 years, that's a lot of time. Yeah. That's a lot of mileage and possibly a lot of leveling up. But most people wait for the perfect time or when life gets less busy, and it never does. Yeah. That fire goes out, another one comes up. Yeah. So it's really simple, but it's hard to stay simple.
Well, and I feel like from another perspective as well is like that guy that is, his tire's flat, got to call tow truck. I think some people might get caught up in like, oh, I have to fix that myself, Yeah. Oh, my engine is destroyed. I have to do that all myself. And they get overwhelmed by the complexity of everything. When, a lot of people's problems can be solved by leaning on other people and asking for help.
Yeah, and that's leverage. It's called leverage. I've got 24 hours, but I could hire 6 people if I got the money. Yeah. and leverage their 24 hours. It's a lot of hours there. So we can leverage in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
And we can leverage our time by doing only the most important things first. Short of the house on fire, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And you do the thing that is in line with your goal, and not these things that are going to pull you off the goal. And the best in the world do something else. They hire the best to teach them, or they hire the best, as we just said, to do it instead of them, to free up their time.
Yeah.
They have, money is just exchange of time.
Yeah.
A really rich guy can buy a Maserati for 3 weeks of work.
Yeah.
It would take us maybe 10 years, 20 years to buy that Maserati.
Right.
So it's leveraging time. And the best in the world do something else. They work on the fundamentals. The batting champion of the major league doesn't work with fancy swings in the batting cage. It's fundamentals. It's micro adjustments, a little looser grip, sinking down a little bit more, slightly turned out toe, whatever it is. Micro adjustments, and they have outside a coach who's probably not near as good, couldn't be a batting champion, but they have an eye for it, and it's a reflection. It's fresh eyes. It's perspective that you didn't have, and they come in and they say, "No, you're tightening up every time you swing. You drop your head and you tighten your grip. Try this.
Right.
Didn't work. We'll try this. Didn't work. Do the same thing in your art. What if I made those hips 2 eggs?" That didn't work. What if I made it a tube at the top, 2 eggs at the bottom? That's better. What if I made it a more of a boxy tube in back and more of a rounded tube in front with 2 eggs? Better. Yeah. That's the sweet spot. Now I go on to the next body part.
Yeah. Right.
And it's the iterations is what I call it.
Yeah.
And you take it one problem at a time. Let's just work on your grip now. Let's find out whether tighter or looser is best. Let's work on your bend of the knees one at a time. Let's just work on the box logic of the nose. Just 3 planes and maybe 2 values, better or worse, better or worse. Let's work on the long axis curve of each body part to get that fluid river of forms that is life. Yeah. More curve, less curve, just right. And you just play like a little kid, but you play strategically. Yeah. And you take one problem at a time, little win. And you do that over time, it compounds.
It's huge,
Einstein said the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest. That's not just, he wasn't just talking about money. Yeah. We do little things over time, magic happens.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think from an artistic perspective, I think a lot of people get into art for the glory of it. They want to work on a movie they really love, make a comic book that they really love, or, they want to be their heroes. And I think that the people that are able to work through and make it to those levels of skill are the people that are able to detach themselves from the outcome and just focus on those moment-to-moment micro improvements.
Or be driven by the outcome. Yeah. But there still has to be a process to get you there. Yeah. So you have your goal, you have your destination, and it's going to, like I said, if you get that goal, you're just going to come up with another goal. Yeah. But it's important that we're goal-making machines. Yeah. So we need those things. We need a place to go, a direction to go. But you have your goal, but you protect the journey. Yeah. We're in a place where and sometimes you have to when you're in survival mode, but we have that Depression era idea, which is sound in its way, but you suffer now and save and scrimp and save, and in 40 years, then you can retire with enough money to really start living. Yeah. So that's, in its own way, it's wisdom, but could we have both? Can we have that goal of scrimping and saving, but do it in a way where we treat ourselves? We can buy a $5 coffee, or we can take 3 weeks off instead of 2 weeks each year, whatever. Yeah. Is there a way of doing both? And again, with art, it's particularly important because that scarcity until there's abundance, that way down the road I'll start living, is stressful. Yeah. Geez, that costs $5 more than I thought. There goes my budget. I got to see, should I not buy a second loaf of bread? Should I put less mayonnaise on it? Yeah. It creates stress. And that's terrible for a creative mind with a creative occupation. Yeah. And so we have to enjoy the journey like a little kid. A little kid's not going to play if it doesn't want to play. Yeah. Little kid, all the energy goes out of them when you say, go clean your room. Multinational CEOs always clean their rooms. Go clean your room if you want to be successful. They have no energy. You say, oh, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I can't do it. Well, I changed my mind. You go play out in the sandbox. Instantly, they're full of energy. Where'd that energy come from?
Yeah.
From their inner motivation, from their creative spark, from their soul, whatever you want to, biologically or spiritually, whatever you want to put to that. Suddenly that little being that was ready to give up and flop down and not move is suddenly filled with energy and excitement and can go past the nap and dinner time and forget it.
Yeah.
So if we can move towards our goals, have the goals, but move towards with energy, with excitement, with inner motivation, can't wait to get back to the drawing table even as I leave it the night before.
Yeah.
Can't do that every time, but if we can do that more often, where are we going to be in 5 years, 45 years?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's having a healthy relationship with what, like, yourself in terms of knowing what your brain actually is. You know, I read this book called the Happiness Hypothesis about the science behind being happy, and it was describing something like the brain is like a rider on an elephant, where the elephant is going to do it's going to do what it wants no matter what, but the conscious brain, the rider, can influence the elephant to go do the things it really wants it to do, you know. And over time, if you train the elephant to go eat sugar and, you know, sit around and do nothing and watch TV, that's what it's going to do inherently. Or if you steer it little by little, it's going to gravitate towards, you know, doing the things that fulfill you.
Yeah. Don't, just have half a cigarette less today of that whole pack.
Right.
You move. We train ourselves to have bad habits all the time. We can. It's easy to train ourselves to be good, to create good habits. We just need a process for that, and we need a little support sometimes.
Right.
And so one of the tragedies of being a creative character, and I think we all are, that is in touch on some level with their creativity, is we don't have that community support. We're doing it alone. Yeah. You know, and most of our groups, we hide half of who we are. I can't tell you who I really voted for. You'd kick me out of the van. You know, I can't say I don't really care about football, European or American. You wouldn't let me come to the bar and hang out with you. I'd be alone. And so we end up hiding ourselves, and certainly oftentimes our creative selves, and we don't have then support. We're incredibly creative people, but we're intensely social. Yeah. And if we don't have that support system, and artists are uniquely ostracized in society for all the reasons we've talked about and more. And so we need to find a support system that is excited about what we're excited about, who will nerd out over how to get a big toe to go back in perspective, how to get the reflection of the sun and the sky in the water in the little creek. Yeah. You know, that's our passion. But when do we get to nerd out about that? Yeah. You know, we'll get people saying that looks real, pat us on the back, but that's not what we really need. Yeah. You know, we'll get people that'll tell us what's wrong with it, like a professor in a college. It's not what we really need. We need support. We need a safe place to play, like a child. And so it's our job to find our tribe that'll help us do that. It's our job to do it for us, be our own kind parent. And the social media, with all its toxicity and all the negativity we know, has democratized knowledge, and you can create a best friend, a soulmate who's 3 continents away. Yeah, you know, and it's happening. So we need to nurture that, and hopefully nurture the algorithms to nurture that. Yeah, but we can do that little step by little step, and it's happening. Yeah, but not quite fast enough. It gets sidetracked by what's the word I'm looking for? Incentives. Yeah. You know, I'll give you more followers if you put out the bad news rather than the good news. Yeah. You know, I'll pay you more money. I'll give you a longer contract if you get eyeballs on a radical view rather than talking about milquetoast stuff. Yeah. We're incentivized to divide oftentimes, and yet our job, our great need as artists and human beings is to connect. Yeah. I mean, you were born the moment before, you were connected to something beautiful, perfect, completely safe. And that's true whether it's biologically in the womb or something up higher. Yeah. and all of a sudden you're separated away.
Right.
And then on some level, you're spending the rest of your life trying to reconnect to something you're not even aware of, can't even talk about because nobody wants to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
And we artists oftentimes go to art through trauma, but it can be healing for us. It can be healing for others if we have a chance to see it for what it really is, and see its effect on other people, and speak with each other in a connected way and not a adversarial, defensive way.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of practice. It takes a new habit to develop. We've developed this bad habit of contention. We've got space between us here.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's always the case and not just physically nowadays.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I think there's a lot of hopeful signs.
I'm pretty optimistic about the future. I think there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but there's also a lot of good stuff. And
there is. There is.
And I think as it comes to social media, I think, in 100 years, people might look back at us and our interaction with it in the same way we look at 1950s people smoking cigarettes, being like, oh, that's so insane that they smoked that much. And it's like, oh, that guy spent 3 hours a day on social media. That's so unhealthy. And, I think, we're just trying our best and it's going to improve slowly in the future.
I think so. And it's just, it's just setting the guidelines and then giving people a choice to be with you with those guidelines or find another place where you're more comfortable. Yeah. I've got some Facebook groups. A Facebook group I put out there as a test for my coaching, my teaching program. Yeah. And there's 20-some thousand in there now. I've had 6 people I've had to talk to in that group about posting unkind statements. Yeah. And I think 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, when I messaged them, apologized, had no idea it came off that way. Yeah. They publicly, on the comments posts, they corrected it, apologized to the person who posted. And I think it was 3 I had to block out of 20,000 people because I set the agenda, set the tone as we're going to be kind and supportive. Yeah. We're not going to be political. We're not going to be anything else. Yeah. And that's the only rule. Yeah. And if that's not for you, I understand. And people appreciate those boundaries. Yeah. And if they don't, they find a place where they're more comfortable with boundaries. Right. So that's all. It's kind of leading rather than waiting for the explosion, and then I'm going to jump in and fight back my right to be me kind of stuff. Yeah. Just let them know where you're at right away. Frame it. Yeah. And then the right people will tend to come. Not all the time, and the wrong people will tend to
bleed in a little bit.
Be demagnetized, repelled a little bit. Not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's something to be said about creating your own world, creating your own values. And, if you exist in a world that makes you sad and depressed and something that makes you not optimistic about humanity as a whole, you can create your own, especially online now, whether it's a Discord group or Facebook group or, some art thingy online, you can make something that's completely supportive, and it's not going to be 100% perfect. And there's going to be moments where it is going to seem a little bit useless, but I still think then it's like, it's possible if you believe in it enough,
Yeah. Yeah. And you could attach mystical ideas to right vibration of your positivity, or we're just really good at reading, which is true. We're really good at reading non-vocal clues, a little twitch of the eye. We'll build a story around that. We'll pick up on that, and oftentimes accurately. Yeah. So it's just finding the people who you sense are right, and you lay it out. This is where I'm at. Yeah. And who's interested in that? And all of a sudden you'll find, even if it's a tiny fraction of the population, is 8 billion people there. Yeah. That tiny fraction could be hundreds of thousands, could be millions of people who agree. Yeah. I've talked with people on 6 continents, and I'll talk about this kind of philosophy of art is the way I think of it that we're talking about, this kind of akin spirituality to art, and they'll do this. Yeah. They know that. They haven't been able to articulate it necessarily, but they knew it when they were 3.
Yeah.
And then they were talked out of it, but they never forgot it, not really.
Right.
And you start talking about what it can be, what they can be. They go, yeah. And all of a sudden they get the energy like that little kid.
Yeah.
Wherein before they realized, geez, I was a little down on myself. I wasn't sure I could do it. But there's steps forward. There's a process there. There's support at every moment that I need it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
yeah.
The tension in the jaw is a little less. You sleep a little better at night, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's that we need that. And we don't have it as much as we need.
Well, and I think it's pretty tragic how little genuine encouragement people need to get that energy. And I've met people who are close to billionaires or billionaires that don't get that energy from the people around them. And it's not money at all.
It's never money. It's survival. It's feeling safe. Billionaires or highly, highly successful, extreme, ultra successful people have two interesting traits. They're at least a little narcissistic. It's all about them. They think they can do anything. And they're almost crippling, in a crippling way, insecure. Yeah. It's a very odd combination. But that's what drives. Those are all fear-based, childlike. Yeah. Me, my toy. But you're going to take it away. I can't have it anymore. That fear of not getting to do something, and that absolute belief that the whole world revolves around me is what drives ultra successful people. And we know ultra successful people fail much more often than ultra poor people who rise out of poverty fail. Yeah. So that metric of yo-yo, I mean, think of the stress in that stressful psyche. It's all about me, and yet I get it and I lose it. Yeah. And no matter how many followers I have, it's never enough. And one statement when I've got 4 million people following me can ruin my day. Yeah. What a way to live. And yet most of us live that way. Yeah. Anybody says just the wrong word, some checkout person we've never seen in a town we just drove through does one wrong thing, it can bother us for hours. Yeah. We're 400 miles away, and our mind is still back at that grocery stand, going around the things you should have said to give them what was coming to them. Yeah. Right. So that's fear. That's otherness. I'm separate. I'm not connected. Right. But if we have enough connection in the passion of what we do, hopefully in the support system we have, that happens a little less. So it's still going to happen sometimes. Yeah. We're not Buddha, but we're not Dalai Lama. But we can live more in the present, which is making art. Yeah. You're lost in this now that's timeless. Not thinking about the future. In fact, you're not even thinking about the next step when you're really flowing with your art. Yeah. It's just happening. Just happening. I'm not doing then this, then this, then this. It's just all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm so much farther away. It's so many hours distance. Yeah. I didn't even feel my body. I didn't even feel myself. Yeah. I was lost in this Zen state. It's what Buddhists do for 30 years in a Tibetan cave to achieve that loss of identity, that oneness. We artists do it. Little kids do it. Yeah. Made to do it.
Well, I feel like that's what everyone is trying to chase fundamentally. It's like a form of validation or something where they're not thinking about their childhood trauma or their business or their marriage or anything. They're thinking about just the mundane moment to moment stroke of a canvas. And I remember I watched one of your lectures a while ago. It was something like when somebody does a deltoid wrong or something. It's a relatively simple process. You draw this and this, and it's very easy to understand objectively. And when somebody messes that up, they're somewhere else. They're thinking about their girlfriend or their boyfriend or something.
Yeah. Or they're new to it, and the hand doesn't do what the brain wants to do, or the brain doesn't understand what that other brain just told him, along with the 40 other things they were told in that hour-long lecture. Right. So it's a process, and we treat it like we treat that child. Yeah. Okay, try it again, see if it's better or worse. Right. It's okay. That's how we learn. Yeah. And you just play with that deltoid. It should be a little square, a little rounder, a little longer, a little fatter, a little lighter, a little darker. Yeah. And you take one problem at a time and see how it feels. Yeah. And then you build a palette, a refined palette for that. You start to see what right looks like. Yeah. When I'm trying to learn Mandarin Chinese, and I'm not, I mean, I don't know how to make any of those sounds. I don't know what they mean. I don't know where they go. I don't know the emphasis. This should be more and this should be less.
Yeah.
But I try it, and then I get some help somehow.
Right.
And I try it again, get some help, and try it again,
Right.
little bit. And over time, you can order a dinner,
Yeah.
and then find a bus, and so on.
Yeah.
And that's all. We expect too much, and we're in a hurry. We're on a deadline.
Yeah.
And we know the other foot's going to drop, and something's going to interrupt us, or something's going to happen, or somebody's going to criticize, or my depression will kick in, and the next 3 days won't be in a place to do that. And all of a sudden, life starts to come down on top.
Yeah.
And we get scared and disconnected from our creativity, from our process.
Yeah.
And we just need to slowly build a process that's safe and has a better chance of winning than losing.
Yeah.
And make sure when we lose, the loss is small.
Right.
It's no big deal. It's just $5. It wasn't the mortgage.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff. But we kind of bet the farm on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say you probably have bad drawing days too.
All the time.
Yeah, and it's 30 years, 45, or however long you've been drawing for.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that you're going to have those failures and those bad days and doing it in spite of it is, I think that's where the real, juice comes in and the real magic comes in.
Yeah. And having strategies around that. Sometimes you just have to say, oh, hell, get up and do something else. I'm just not going to draw it. I just can't make it work. My head's someplace else, or I don't know. I ate something wrong last night.
Yeah.
And you just cut yourself a break.
Yeah.
And other times you just go smaller. Can't do this, but maybe I can do this. I can't do this. Maybe I can just do balls that are shaded the same way the eye is.
Yeah.
And you parse it down to a little win. And if you can finish on that win, you get a little shot of dopamine. And that's the old brain saying, do that again. I think we'll survive tomorrow if you keep doing that because you feel safe. If you're stressed, so the old brain, the old parent, the old servant, don't do that, Art. You're no good at that. You can't. What are you kidding? You make a living at that? Look at that drawing. Yeah. And we talk ourselves out of it. That's our old reptile brain saying, don't do something new. It's dangerous. Yeah. Might attract attention from the wrong people, the wrong animal. Do the same thing over and over because it's proven. Yeah. And that's our school system. Yeah. That's our political system. We're going to do the same thing, just more of it, and see if it works. Yeah. Well, that's insanity. Right. Doing the same thing, expecting a different result is insanity. Yeah. But if you can't talk to the other side that might have new ideas, where is their wisdom? Yeah. How can I be sure of my truth? I'm not willing to compare it to someone else's truth. Right. Do I, in this age of whatever it is, 60 billion posts, bits of information every second, can I be sure I have all the truth and have curated the right bits of information for that truth? Probably not going to happen. Yeah. So I better get some help. I better get people who think at least a little and hopefully a lot differently. And if we can quit arguing, which is a war of words, but seeking truth, which is a connected endeavor, then we can start comparing notes. I mean, we can't even agree on the facts of the most pressing issues of the time and maybe in human history, whatever it is. Each side has a set of facts, and they're very smart people are absolutely sure of them. Yeah. How can that be when they're completely different than the other facts? Right. Is it a conspiracy theory? Or are they trying to blow up the world? I don't think so. They're trying to do what they think is best for themselves and for those around them. Yeah. And we should, if we can start with that, in a little art practice, in a big political environment. Yeah. Now we get movement. Now we get clarity. Right. And now we've got a process that works better. Yeah. And that all takes dialogue. Yeah. Dialogue with your own inner self, journaling, doing gratitude, whatever it is, dialogue with others who are where you want to be, dialogue with people who are not close to where you ought to be because you'll learn by teaching. Yeah. That's all community stuff. Right. That's how we improve. Yeah. Well, and again, as I'm getting older, I'm kind of blown away just by the complexity of the planet as a whole. Even for art, you could become a figurative artist and
dial into one specific form of anatomy or gesture or whatever, and that be your entire life study. And that's just one specific form of art. When, there's the same thing about learning how to, change engines in cars or become a doctor or any of this kind of stuff. And there's so much that we don't know as individuals that the idea of arrogance and having a giant ego becomes a little bit silly the more of the world that you're able to see, I think.
Yeah. And at least counterproductive.
Yeah.
And we live in an eco universe. Everything's connected.
Right.
You can't study the roots without looking at the trunks and the branches and the leaves and the fruit. In fact, you can't try to study the tree without studying the soil and the insect and the other trees. It goes on forever.
Yeah.
There's a concept called the holon, an atom. Atom means individual, indivisible.
Yeah.
Complete in and of itself. It isn't stable. It's good just as it is. And yet it has this great desire, really a desire on some level, to come together with other atoms and become a molecule.
Right.
And the molecule then is complete in and of itself, perfect.
Yeah.
And yet it has this great desire to connect to others to become a cell, and a cell to an organ, and an organ to an organism to a herd, and a herd to an ecosystem to a planet to the solar system, the galaxy, universe, the multiverse. That's complexity on complexity. That's different than complicated.
Right.
It's quantum.
Yeah.
We think maybe one theory is our brain is a quantum brain.
Yeah.
It's a hologram in a sense. You could take a fragment, it would be complete of the greater thing.
Yeah.
We have the cells of stars in us. We are intimately connected, and yet we still, in almost all of our political systems and in almost all of our scientific systems, still work with a mechanized model.
Yeah.
It's just really complicated. That's different than complex. There's a lot of gears in that clock.
Yeah.
And if one gear breaks, I take it out and study it. I can put a new one back. The whole clock works. That's not life.
Yeah.
That's not a personality. It's not a person. Certainly not the universe.
Yeah.
And yet we're trying to solve problems in this mechanical model.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to punish the kid until he does his homework.
Right.
I'm just going to slap him until he toughens up. I'm going to shame her until she loses weight, or whatever it is we decide is the right fix for the machine called family or political party or whatever it is. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Never did. But when you're in survival, it's the best you have.
Yeah.
We'll all hold spears. You look that way, I'll look this way. We do the same thing in the same way, we're safer.
Yeah.
It's not where we're at in this world anymore. We're in a complex world, not a complicated world anymore. Mm-hmm. And yet we're trying to use these old models of decision-making that have to change.
Yeah.
And the internet's helping to do that.
Yeah. Well, and they're all fundamentally abstractions. There's something that worked at one level in spite of all the flaws, and they continue to work, so we keep using them. But there's no reason to believe that any of the structures we have, education, government, art, or any of that stuff is the best final way of doing it. And,
and it's a great point. Go ahead, I interrupted.
I guess I was going to say that going back to the complexity thing of if I were to go and try to understand everything about how I run this podcast, from like how do these cameras work to how did this van work, how to shape the metal to create the structure of the van, how to make this table, how a microphone works, I would never get anywhere because it'd be too much information to try to understand, So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. There's a paper out there where a guy took the time to figure out how you make it just a little school pencil with the eraser, the yellow beveled cylinder, 42 people. Yeah. To put together that simple thing.
Right.
It's complexity.
Yeah.
There's you were going to say something?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
There's a theory out there called the integral theory. Ken Wilber is a kind of proponent of it. And he makes, I like the point. He makes the point that we have these stages and states that we're in. And the stages of humanity basically go through different stages up to more advanced, more primitive kind of stuff. But however you define that, he makes, I think, a very wise point. when you go from that more primitive state to the next level of competence or compassion or however you're measuring that improvement, you can't throw away the old states.
Yeah.
That's a hold on. And it is the stuff that made this other state. And we're in this place where, as a liberal, I'm much more advanced than those conservatives, let's say, or as a multiculturalist, I'm much more advanced than those nationalists. I might be, depending on how you measure that. I don't disagree with that. But it's different saying that my new level of understanding has more wisdom, more facts, more metrics that can show it's a better way to live. That doesn't invalidate all this.
Yeah.
It's just expanding that. And we're in this stage right now where when you reach this level of higher living, whatever it is, you want to weaponize that. And you want to then say anybody who's behind me in line is my enemy.
Yeah.
And we got to get rid of that other side of the aisle. Those conservatives, they're going to destroy the country. We know how to make the country, in fact, the world, a better place. So we got to defeat them, again, warlike. Whereas the integral theory says, no, they work together. You don't get rid of the atom to make the molecule.
Yeah.
The atom is still the atom. The molecule is still the molecule, even though it's now a cell. It's part of that.
Yeah.
And it's integral to making. It's essential for the cell to be a cell, to be a healthy cell. And so this idea that I've got more truth than the next guy could be true, but that doesn't invalidate everything they are.
Yeah.
That's just, you're just encompassing that and expanding on that.
Right.
And it's a foundation that we're trying to throw out from under ourselves, even as we're trying to climb higher. So it's a fear-based model.
Yeah.
More people stay down here than join me up there in nirvana.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that saying, something like the path to utopia is paved with the, dead bodies of everyone that they, I'm butchering the quote, but the idea is the same.
Yeah.
Like
well, and there's some truth to that, unfortunately. I mean, it's we live in life, and it has certain realities. And if I'm going to build up my muscles, I'm actually wounding them.
Yeah.
And then they have to heal, and they heal back stronger.
Yeah.
And so there's collateral damage as we grow. And unfortunately, we're focusing on the growth and not worrying about the collateral damage. And we're using, sometimes I think, blunderbusses in areas of life and culture when we should be using scalpels. And we end up having people suffer for good intentions. Nobody wants to destroy the planet.
Right.
Nobody wants to have us burn up and have more hurricanes or whatever it is. Nobody wants people to have lung cancer when they're smoking. Yeah. Everybody has the best of intentions. They're just trying to get along. Yeah. We just need to have a dialogue about collateral damage. Yeah. How much do we want to have freedom or growth or whatever it is, and how much are we willing to suffer for that? Yeah. I mean, we have gas stoves. We're talking about maybe getting rid of them. There's several hundred people and sometimes several thousand people every year who die from gas stoves. Yeah. We just had something blow up on the news. It was some beautiful old, I think, Italian school. It was apparently a gas leak. Yeah. So do we take all the gas stoves away? Do we take all the cars away? Do we take all the freedom away? We have to have a dialogue about where's the balance between? And we're in a place where we can't talk to people who disagree. So how are we going to find the balance? How are we going to find real wisdom and not just a victory in this particular battle, but the war is going to keep going?
Yeah. Well, I believe very much in the individual effect on the world as a whole, because I don't think anyone is necessarily morally, clean from just being a consumer. I'm not judging anyone. I think everyone has to exist in the world that we do. But even for me, I don't know if the people that made my iPhone in China were paid fairly, or the cameras or the van or any of this stuff. And, I think that change starts inside yourself and inside of your community versus trying to operate at at the national or global scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I think change usually is grassroots.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have big movements, big wars, whatever. But most of the time, whoever's in the White House, next cycle probably won't change your life in this community or wherever you end up. But you can change your life in this community.
Yeah.
And just with a few people, there's a lovely concept called the tipping point. I think it's 3% or 5%. You get 3% of the population buying that particular shoe.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it goes viral.
Yeah.
3% of people checking that particular post. 3% of the people doing that particularly kind thing. All of a sudden it becomes a new norm, the new process for living, part of our identity, a part of how we see ourselves as a good person or a popular person or whatever our metric is success in.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to make that shift. You don't need 51% like an election to tip the scale. 3%.
Yeah.
So that's grassroots. That's not global.
Yeah, well, I remember talking to somebody about the comics industry. They do like something as small as the comics industry, where on the global scale it's relatively small, but there's like 200,000 dedicated comic fans that will buy enough to keep the industry afloat.
Yeah.
And among those people, it's like 200,000 people is not a lot of people,
No.
A single comic shop in a small town might sway the next Marvel movies coming out, which might sway millions of people to think a different way or not, And the purchasing power of that audience makes it actually a pretty big difference on the planet as a whole.
Pretty big difference, it does. Yeah, it's a butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Little bit of movement
Right.
compound interest.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And that's encouraging. We can make a difference if we can be heard, and we're in an age of being heard.
Yeah.
Algorithms are a bit of a problem. We tend to, if I voted for that guy, I'm going to see all of the reasons I should keep voting for that guy. If you voted for that woman, you'll get all the news articles that prove that you made the right choice. You do it again.
Yeah.
And so we're teased apart in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
But our instinct is to connect together.
Yeah.
And so art's one of those things that speaks with those deep, thoughtful, and best of, I think, potentially instincts. And that we live, look at all the incredible comedic stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a cat. Look at the amazing, riffs on a drum beat that happens on TikTok as it consciously evolves into something more than it was through community. Yeah. I'm just going to add this. I'm going to do this.
Right.
And all of a sudden you got this amazing kaleidoscope of sound. You go, oh my God, that's amazing.
Right.
Look at that's world-class creative talent happening unconsciously, piece by piece, process by process. Or someone, with $600 or $2,000 or whatever it costs, puts together a sound studio and puts together an incredible album. Yeah. Or the guy during COVID who filmed himself in his little apartment.
Bo Burnham?
Yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
He did that, how much money did it take?
Anyone could do that, right?
Anyone can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone can do that.
Yeah.
Or somebody who's painting on the wall with dripping paint, all of a sudden a face comes out of it. And people are doing that. They weren't taught in school how to do that. Yeah. There's not a degree for that stuff.
Yeah.
But just pure creative genius coming out because they had a motivation to do it.
Right.
Because they were bored or because they had an insight or whatever it is. That is being nurtured by this technology.
Absolutely.
And the prices are halving, even as the memory of a computer goes up, the price halves over time. That's all democratization of knowledge, of technology, of opportunity.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like for me personally, I'm realizing just the crazy access to tools that I have relative to the generations before me. And I think the thing that I'm battling with most is nihilism, to see what I'm doing, my relatively small channel, 2,600 subs-ish now, relative to, like, I was working for Proco for a few years, like 3 million now. It's easy to see as what I'm doing is completely meaningless to what I was doing before.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that I run into way more than the technical stuff, And my ability to contend with those feelings and move past it is that is the thing that actually drives me forward and have people actually consume the thing that I'm creating way more than anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you talked about those 200,000 comic book fanatics,
Yeah.
buy anything. 1,000 people, you've heard this before.
Yeah.
Can be your career. You get 1,000 passionate people who buy basically anything you put out there, you're set.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't take a lot.
No.
I did to learn how to run a business for what I'm doing now. When you sell art, you get a gallery, you get a commission. It's not really a business. You just send a product, they send you back a check kind of thing. But to actually have employees and client fulfillment and marketing, all that businessy stuff, I had to hire somebody to help me do that.
Yeah.
Now I forget what I was going to say about that. I lost the point.
Yeah. Well,
it was something really smart.
Yeah,
we'll add it in this brilliant statement.
Absolutely.
I'll call you on the phone.
Sounds good.
But back to your point about the knowledge. I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
There's people making, what is it? I just saw it. I'm no longer part of the program, but I keep tabs on it. Sky, and I've met him. He's a really nice guy. He makes $100,000 a month in his business. I forget what it is.
Yeah.
And he's got 2,600 people in his Facebook group. Yeah. And he sells to them.
Right.
2,600 people. He's making over $1 million a year, $1.2 million a year.
Right.
Just for that, the same number as you have.
Yeah.
You just reach a few people. It doesn't have to be thousands. Yeah. But it's your tribe.
Right.
It's people that you curate, like you curate your knowledge to do this and to do your art. Yeah. And they'll support you on some level. Yeah. They'll tell their friends, or they'll buy a little bit of this, or 100%. throw you a Patreon subscription for that or something. Absolutely. It's out there. Yeah. So it's not nothing.
No, it's not. Well, and I think again, I think everyone deals with some degree to the glass ceiling and identity you were talking about.
Yeah,
before.
we compare.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like for me personally, like I tend to be on the more negative side of myself, and something that I've talked about before, but like when I was a young kid, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, I was put into special ed, and that, labeling stuck with me throughout my entire education.
Yeah.
Thought I was an idiot, all this stuff.
It does.
And it was a very damaging thing to me. And I feel like, again, the thing I'm pushing against more so than anything is that labeling of myself as somebody who is incompetent or somebody who can't do that,
Yeah. And we all have some of that. And a lot of times we all have a lot of that. Yeah. So it's, when I think of that, I think of smiles. Yeah. You've probably heard this. Mm. If you smile,
okay, yeah.
within a few minutes, you're actually happier than you were.
Right.
So you fake it.
Yeah.
You pretend, God, that's ugliest drawing I ever saw. But that little girl, you're not going to tell her that. Yeah. You say, honey, that's just beautiful. I love the energy. Yeah. You'll find a way to compliment him or her on that little piece of art that's probably not necessarily life. That might be the truth. The sheer joy of those colors, faces like this. It's a terrible academic drawing at 4 years old. Who'd have thought? And yet you can find things, honestly, if you look hard enough, that compliment her. Because intrinsically, intuitively, that you don't protect the result. She won't have a good result for years. Yeah. You protect the joy. Right. So that'll bring her back. Why don't we do that for ourselves? So if I've got a habit of putting myself down, and we all do that at times. I'm working on my language right now. You said earlier you were looking for something, and you said something about, boy, I'm really bad at that. Yeah. And I said, yeah, me too. And I went, no, I'm getting better. I'm working on it. Yeah. Flip that script on that. You do that. We do that for kids. You're terrible at cleaning up your room. You got a C-. You're terrible at school. A kind parent wouldn't do that. Yeah. So we just start practicing a new habit. Yeah. Journaling is great for that. Extreme athletes, you get on top, the helicopter drops you off on top of that mountain. If you fall, you'll die. Yeah. I'm not afraid. I'm excited. Yeah. They reframe it. You say, okay, God, I can't believe I got to do this at work this week. What am I excited about?
Yeah.
I'm excited to get through this. I'm excited to start because I know once I start, it won't be near as bad as thinking about it.
Yeah.
You reframe that. We know gratitude does all sorts of things for mindset, does all sorts of things for success metrics.
Yeah.
People who do gratitude journals, just 3 of them in the morning, have a more calm mind than 20 minutes of meditation,
Yeah.
more likely to level up in their corporation and make more money, more likely to get that project done faster and better than their colleagues.
Yeah.
It does amazing things for us. It's a little tiny thing. Why don't we do that?
Right. Well, and I think it's easier to take care of other people than yourself,
Totally is.
Yeah.
And it's complicated. We live in a complicated world,
Yeah.
and life itself is worse than that. It's complex.
Yeah.
And we've got everything to look at. But if we could just do that little to-do list,
Yeah.
the first thing in the morning, I'm going to do 3 gratitudes.
Right.
I'm going to drink 2 quarts, half gallon of water every
Yeah.
day. I'm struggling drinking a half gallon of water every day.
Yeah.
How easy is that?
Yeah.
And yet we don't do it.
Right.
So if we can create a little system first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
I'm going to drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
And then I'm half done already.
Right.
And then it's a little easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, looking at that change is something that's not going to be overnight, It's like
No,
it
3
takes-
weeks.
Yeah.
After 3 weeks, 21 days, most brains,
Yeah.
it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
After a year, it's just ingrained. It's part of your identity. If I don't draw in the morning, I don't feel right. I got to draw a page in my sketchbook because I've been doing it a year.
Yeah.
But in 3 weeks, you're over that hump.
Yeah.
And if it's a little challenge, it's not a big deal. That wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that was pretty good. Oh, wait. I almost forgot to do that. All of a sudden, you've got momentum.
Yeah.
We know from thermodynamic laws and laws of motion, all that kind of stuff. We know these laws of the universe, the same laws of our psyche.
Yeah.
A object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to keep going in motion. It's momentum.
Right.
The hardest part is to start.
Yeah.
And then you have momentum. And then the next hardest thing is extreme acceleration towards the end, because then you have to have stamina. To hit the speed of light. That takes most of our energy. To go from really good to world class takes a lot of energy because it's little tiny things stacked efficiently. But we don't have to start there, luckily.
Well, and I feel like the compounding of, like you start with yourself and then you're able to hire people and then you're able to take advantage of other people's time and pay them a good enough salary to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And, it becomes this compounding thing to where you can actually have this little business surrounding yourself that, takes care of yourself, your family, and other people.
And when you have community, it's easier.
Yeah.
If you have a gym partner, you're less likely to ditch them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're counting on you.
Yeah.
You have a team around you, and they've been trained not just in the steps to run the business. They're trained in the mission, in the meaning of why we're doing this. We're not just selling memberships to make money. We're changing lives.
Yeah.
We're bringing more beauty into the world when we make more artists.
Yeah.
You do that, all of a sudden they're more motivated, and then their momentum becomes your momentum.
Yeah.
I started teaching because I was afraid I was burning out.
Yeah.
All my teachers from Art Center had burned out, almost all of them.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I'm becoming that. I'm the illustrator. I'm staying up all night over the weekend doing these schlocky movie posters. And I was burning out of the thing I love. So I started hanging out with young kids who loved what I used to love and were more excited than me, and started teaching them. And by teaching them, they were paying me to practice.
Yeah.
I was hanging around people who had to talk about what I wanted to talk about. I was in a class, and I fed off their excitement.
Yeah.
And I stole their best secrets.
Right.
Oh, those 2 colors. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah.
They were teaching me how to become a better artist.
Yeah.
And they were paying a lot of money to do it.
Right.
That's what we want. We can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Even if we're isolated, we're going to look at the internet. We're going to buy a book or two, a system or two. Can't do it alone.
Yeah.
And the more connected we are to those others, the more likely we are to succeed. And yet we're usually forced socially or self-imposed exile, forced to do it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think from a business perspective as well, like making it work logistically, being able to pay rent, have a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. It comes down to breaking things into like simplifying things in the same way you'd simplify a drawing,
Micro adjustments.
Yeah. Like to make $10,000 a month, you need to sell 250 things at $40 each, and 250 people for $40 a month.
Yeah.
Or $40 each thing. That's not that much of an ask,
Not that much.
Yeah.
And then you can make then simple adjustments to the process. You can make that $40 product so good it would be a steal at $200.
Yeah.
And then you can take that $40 and you can make it $60.
Yeah.
You've just 3x your business, actually.
Yeah.
Because your expenses haven't changed at all.
Right.
But now you're making 50% on everything else.
Yeah.
And then if you can raise your sales rate,
yeah,
exponential growth.
Right. Yeah, and thinking about having a successful business, I think it's not trying to operate at the Coca-Cola level where you're selling millions or billions of cans of Coke every year. You're selling dozens or hundreds. It's not reaching for the stars in your first thing.
Yeah.
And having that capacity to like break down and just like, I was talking to this guy. I had this podcast, and I normally put up a sign if I'm in public that says we're recording a podcast, come say hi. And this couple from I think New Zealand or something came and talked to us, and they had explored all of the safari, like all of Africa and the outback and stuff. And he was telling us that like he sees so many people looking down to try and be successful. They're trying to look down on people, but the way you really become successful is you look up or across.
Yeah.
You're trying to like be a servant to everybody that you can.
Yeah. The millionaires try and hang out with the multimillionaires. And they'll pay them a lot of money to do it. Multimillionaires hang out with the billionaires.
Yeah.
So you look up.
Yeah.
And you try and connect up.
Right.
And you make it valuable for them.
Yeah.
You make them feel good for helping you, or you pay them a lot of money, or you give them a little piece.
Yeah.
Like I think Bezos owns like 17% of Amazon.
Yeah.
He looked up and found people with more money.
Yeah.
Let him go, whatever it was, 7, 8, 10 years, losing money.
Yeah.
Because it was a brilliant sales model.
Yeah.
And he just built market share for all that time.
Right.
He had a process, he had a plan, and he found people who were excited about what he was excited about, and further along, they had deeper pockets.
Yeah.
And he connected, created community around that.
Yeah.
Nobody does it alone.
Yeah.
And we have that myth of somebody going to Walden's Pond, to going in the cabin in the woods and writing a masterpiece. And it happens.
Yeah.
But more often and more joyfully, it happens when we can be around people who are excited about what we're excited about, and we feel free and safe to talk about it. Right. And by articulating, we go, I didn't even know I knew that. I just said that. Yeah. So that's what it is in podcasts, internet, traveling to different cities in the U.S. That's making connections. That's spreading the good news. That's growth. That's creativity. Yeah. That's all habits of success. Yeah. And yet most of us are locked away. Yeah. Either mentally or physically or both.
Right. Cool. Here, I'm going to see how long we've been going for. We've been going for about an hour and a half or so.
Okay. Probably should wrap it up.
We're going to wrap it up. Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you doing this. It's super cool to talk to you. And how should people follow you online?
Just Google my name, Steve Huston. You can go to stevehuston.com. You'll find all my social media there, everything I'm doing, and they can reach out to me from there.
Sweet. Cool. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah. Fist bump. I'll do that.
I always do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sick.
Cool.
I do it in every podcast.
I feel so hip now.
No, awesome. Cool. Sick. Well,
wait. That's a good feeling.
Nice. Sick. Awesome.
It's been about 4 decades. Thank you. Thanks so much, Christian.
Well, thank you.